Hi, everybody, and welcome. We began studying chapter 48, and I gave you a nice introduction, which I think will cover a large part of this chapter. We began speaking about the idea of Or Ein Sof, light with no end. The idea that unlimited is no way can be compared to any number. Because if something has a limit, every number has a value compared to that number. So even if it's 10 billion, 100 billion, a trillion, if you remove one, because it's made out of many ones, many singles, if you remove a single number, it changes the total. But if I have no end to whatever object or goods, then you can remove as many as you want. I will still have no end. In other words, it will not change the total. That's the uniqueness of Or Ein Sof. This universe had been created to be reflecting its creator. It would be with no end, energy with no end, giving with no end, limitless, and therefore there would be no possibility for human beings to live their own life, to enjoy, for new generations to come about. What does God do? In his great kindness, we're going to talk about it in detail tonight. He went and created a total separation between the creator and the created, so that they cannot be a direct product of the creator. I shared, and we discussed it, I believe, at length last time, that every time something is created, the created is a reflection of the creator. We call it Ila ve'alul, source and product. So if I plant a pear or a peach seedlings, it will grow a peach tree. So if I come here to the orchard and I see orange trees, I can guarantee you that the person who planted it put a seedling of an orange, not a lemon and not a pineapple. In other words, the product reflects the start. By God, if it would reflect God as the creator of the universe, there will be no end. There is no limitations. And therefore, God had to do something new. We call it creating something from nothing. It's not nothing. It's nothing compared to where it came from, the vast distance and separation is so much that it's considered that it came from nothing. With that, God created a finite universe, a finite planet, a finite globe, a finite human being, earth, water, all the plants, etc., with a set number and a set qualities and quantities, so we are able to interact with God through every part of the universe. That's why if God was not very extremely kind to us or careful, there will be no universe, there will be no human beings as we know it. Why is it important? As I shared last week, the entire chapter of 48 is very deep philosophy. It will aid us when we come to 49 to understand how great God is, and hopefully it will bring us much easier to falling in love with God. We just started reading. I also shared that time is a created finite being. Today, science agree. At the time of the Tanya, it was debated, but Kabbalah tells us from time immemorial, from the Zohar, 2,000 years ago, that when God desired to create the universe, he created time. And therefore, time has a start and time must come to an end. Today, we know that time is units, just like money, just like water, just like soil. and therefore each moment is unique and special. There will be no endless time. Time by very nature is units, and therefore it has an end. It's finite. God created this system, and then he planted a universe with all its inhabitants, including the human being, and from that moment we start counting the time. I am going to read on page 729. Had the worlds descended from the light of the blessed Ein Sof without contractions, but according to a gradual descent from grade to grade, by means of cause and effect, the loftiest level being the direct cause for the manifestation of the level immediately following it will be a similar. Such is the case, the Rabbi is adding, such is the case with regards to thought and speech. That which a person speaks first, found within his thought. The thought is the cause and speech is the effect. Though thought is more spiritual than speech, the two levels stand in a certain proportion to each other in that, for example, both are composed of letters that form words. And so with every cause-effect relationship, the effect must partake of the characteristics of its cause. It would be impossible for a cause to bring into existence an effect which is infinitely removed from it. And I shared with you last week, the more I contemplate and prepare a speech, the shorter. It's a famous Abraham Lincoln. Once he was interviewed, and he asked how long it takes you to prepare a 50-minute speech. And he says, a 50-minute speech takes me 2 weeks. No, I'm sorry, it takes me 2 weeks. Says 2 weeks, 50-minute speech. So how long will it take you to prepare a 2-hour speech? He says, 2-hour speech take me a day. Wow. And 2.5 hours? He says, 2.5 hours takes me half an hour. So they says, what? The longer the speech, the less time to prepare. I said, of course. The more I prepare, the better I express myself. So if it's a short speech, I have to spend much more time. People who think before they speak, by the way they express themselves, tells us what goes through their mind. Because there is a cause and effect. My intellect is the plant that produces my speech, unless I think I speak nonsense. Therefore, when you talk to a person and it makes sense and he speaks in pleasant way and he does not try to repeat himself and go in beating the bush, you know that the mind was preparing very well before he uttered the words. Why? Because it is cause and effect. You won't be able to find someone who speaks without thinking, and that speech would be making sense. Since the light and vitality, the creative power that emanates from God is infinite, while created beings are finite, it goes without saying that they could not possibly have come into being in a matter of cause and effect. For if this were the case of a cause and effect, this world and all it contains would not have been created in its present form in a finite and limited order. From the earth to the firmament is a distance of 500 years, 500 years journey being a finite dimension, and similarly limited is the distance between one firmament and the next, and so also the radial extent of each firmament is a distance of 500 years, and all the above applies to this world. Did you understand what we just studied? So let me explain. I don't know how to explain it that will make sense. I'm just going to show what Kabbalah tells us. Kabbalah tells us, remember we study about there are 4 universes, 4 worlds. The distance between one universe and another is 500 years. The distance that it takes to travel, I would say 500 light years, because light is the fastest, right? Light is the fastest traveling, the travels the fastest. So take that for 500 years, and that's when you get. The thickness of each universe is also 500 light years. That's how far they are from each other. It's not just layers in a 7-layer cake that you can cut them all at the same time, slice them. It's huge, it's vast, it's unimaginable. However, it's finite. It's 500 light years. After 500 light years, you reach a second universe. You reach a whole different plateau. That's why because everything in this world is finite. There is no infinite except the neshama, the soul. You're not created. And God was not created. But the soul is infinite. But other than the soul, by the way, I don't want to get into to more discussion about that. There is another part in this universe that is infinite, and that is, I think I showed last week, the power to reproduce, to have children. And I'm not talking only about human beings. The tree, the power in the seed to create another tree is infinite. Because how many mangoes from one seed can be created? Infinite. It's all a matter of time. That seed will produce a tree. The tree will yield every season, let's say about 50 mangoes. Each of them will yield in 5 years' time another tree. Endless, and the exponential, the expansion, it's not just linear. It goes on both horizontal and vertical, because the expansion is limitless. This is one gift that God has given us in this universe. That's why we are so careful about hurting an animal or a plant. I don't know if anybody is aware, there is a sin to hurt animals. We have to be kind to animals. Castrating an animal, for example, is a sin, no matter what, no matter under what conditions. So even if there is an overpopulation, there has to be another solution than that, the neutering them. The same is about trees. There is no allowance for fruit-bearing tree to be chopped, even at time of war. I don't know if anybody is aware. The Torah in Deuteronomy says to us that when you make a siege around a town where the inhabitants are our enemies, they want to kill us, and we want to conquer them and kill them all, or chase them away. The Torah says, do not chop the trees, even though it's a good tactic to prevent them from surviving. Because if there are no trees, first they will be discovered, second, they will have no food to live on. But the trees, the Torah tells us, the tree had nothing to suffer, had not did anything evil to you, and therefore it's forbidden. But the Kabbalah goes on to say, because the power of Ein Sof, of limitless, is expressed in the trees, in fruit-bearing trees. And therefore, you have no right to stop it. This is something that's out of our reach. So in Israel in particular, before a fruit-bearing tree is cut, there is a discussion, and we discuss it with the rabbi. And the rabbi will need to, so to say, find a loophole. So if you want to expand a house, and there's an orange tree or a pomegranate tree, there is a debate, and there needs to be a special allowance before the tree can be an oak tree, a cedar tree. It's one thing, but a fruit-bearing tree is a different outlook, and it's not so easy. And I know many times a rabbi would say, you're not supposed to, don't do it. Wait for the tree to die. If the tree dies by itself, that's a different story. So it's not a tree that we are, so to say, about to be extinct, and therefore we need to protect it. But every tree is the power of Ein Sof, and therefore be careful of what you do to it. That's what the rabbi is saying. I continue reading. The Rebbe notes, although it was indicated early in chapter 39 that souls delight in God and derive pleasure from the form and comprehend the infinite Ein Sof light, this poses no difficulty. Why? For there is a limit to the apprehension of the light of the blessed Ein Sof, which shines upon them through being clothed in the Chabad and so on. Souls and angels, says the Rebbe, which inhabit these worlds, comprehend godliness as a result of its vestitude in the Chabad, in Chokhmah Bin Adat of those worlds. Though lofty, their comprehension is nonetheless limited. I'm going to continue reading because I shared with you the idea. Hence, there is also a limit to the enjoyment that they derive from the rays of the Shekhinah and to their pleasure in the light of God. Why? For they are incapable of deriving enjoyment and delight of an infinite order without being nullified out of their existence and returning to their source. If you want to connect to God truly with your essence, you'll be totally gone because God is unlimited. God is Ein Sof, and therefore connecting to God will become Ein Sof, limitless, and therefore we'll lose our identity, our personality. Therefore, the Torah, anywhere you read about pleasure in the world to come, it's called Ne'ani Miziv. Ziv is a ray, or light, or an extension, not from God itself.
The rays of the Shekhinah and the light of God.
Same.
Right.
It's the same, but it's not God himself. Because if it's God himself, there will be nothing. You understand? Thus, even the creatures of the highest spiritual worlds are finite beings, and in order for them to be created in a finite manner, the process of contraction must be invoked. Being finite, they are totally dissimilar to their source, the infinite godly light that exists prior to the contraction. I think I explained that very well before. I want to continue. Now, says the Rebbe, as for the intricate details of the contractions, how they achieve their effect, and what they actually are, this is not the place for their explanation. But in general, they are something in the nature of an obscuring and concealment of the flow of light and vitality. Now the Rabbi is going to talk about the actual process. Until now, we talked about the fact that there is no connection directly between the creator and the created. It's impossible for them to connect. No matter at whichever intersection, they will never meet. We, the holiest, loftiest creatures or beings, can only connect with the light of God, or the ray of God, with light of Ein Sof, not with God. Now the Rabbi is saying, how is it happening? So God must hide and conceal, so that the light and vitality should illuminate and reach the lower creatures in a revealed manner, pervading them and acting in them and animating them in such a way that they exist ex nihilo, in only an extremely minute measure, so that they be in a state of finitude and limitations. I will explain everything, just let's continue reading. Were their life force to be revealed within them, they would be infinite. Contraction ensures that the light and vitality which is their life force remains concealed from them. All that is revealed is but a minute degree of light and vitality. This light and vitality that is revealed within them after the contraction constitutes an infinitesimal illumination and is truly considered as naught when compared with the quality of the limitless and infinite illumination, and there is no proportion of relationship between them. What the Rabbi is saying is, by the time the human being and the world was created as a finite, taking it back, the little ray of light that came to this universe is so minute that don't even exist compared to the source. That is, they are not quantitatively different, not even immensely different in quantity, but of a whole different and incomparable quality, as the term proportion is understood in number values, where the number 1 stands in a certain ratio to the number of 1 million, for it is a 1/1,000,000th part of it. The sum of 1 million is merely the sum of 1 million ones. Subtract but 1, and the million ceases to exist. It will be less than the million. A clear demonstration of the relation and subsists between 1 and a million. But as regards a thing which transcends finitude and numeration, there is no number, however great, that can be relative to it. For a billion and a trillion, when compared to infinity, do not even attain the relevancy of the value of 1 in comparison with a billion or a trillion. But for the sum of 1 retains some degree of relevance even when compared to a trillion. It is in fact 1/1,000,000th of it, while even a sum of large as a trillion has no relevance at all when compared to the realm of infinite, but is veritably accounted as nothing. Ali, did you understand that?
Every word.
Oh, wow.
Try telling that to Elon Musk.
So if you have a billion and I removed $1 from the billion, it's not a billion because it's 1/1000,000th part that was removed. So there is a value, albeit very minute. If I have infinite, remove $1 billion from the infinite machine that produces, it doesn't make any difference. Why? Because as I look at it, the total sum remains infinite. It didn't change. There is no value. Says the Rebbe, comparing God, which is infinite, to a human being which is finite, no matter how great that human being, a billion, not a 1, 10 billion, 100 billion, compared to infinite, there is no value. And therefore, there has never been a connection. Never. So what God did in order for him to create, he already discovered that it's from nothing. It never will be able to point to the source. But God, with his kindness, needed to contract so much of the light that it becomes a whole different new light that is finite.
So compared to God, everything is insignificant.
Correct. Completely insignificant. But we'll discover soon that God wanted to derive pleasure from an finite, insignificant creature. That's the point. Okay, now we're getting to another topic. Sovev and Memale. Let me give you let me share with you. I see that you need a story.
30 or 40 minutes.
Take your time.
So I'll share a few stories. The story is known as a parable related by Reb Nachman of Breslev, the founder of the Breslev Hasidim. There was a king whose son was so spoiled, the prince, that one day he took himself into that he's a chicken. He's a chicken. He took off his clothes and he crawled under the table and he started eating from whatever fell down to the floor. And his father tried, but his father was very kind. He could not use, the whip. And the child refused. And it would cause a lot of embarrassment because he was lying there naked in the filth, refused to allow the maids to clean up, and whatever chicken and bones would fall, he would say, he's a chicken, that's what a chicken eats. They brought in psychologists and psychiatrists. They tried with medication. Nothing worked. After 2 weeks, the king was beside himself. A man came and says, let me take care of it. And he came in And he says to the king, as long as you don't bother me, you give me a full autonomy. The king says, I've tried everything. The man walking at lunch with everybody for lunch, and this child was lying there naked, and he takes off his clothes and he enters under the table. And the prince turns to him and says, who are you? And he says, I'm a chicken. And who are you? He says, I'm a chicken too. He says, so it's two chickens. How beautiful. And they spend time together. They eat the bones that people throw to them and whatever, whatever spaghetti falls down, the remnants. After 2 days, the adult, the teacher, signaled to one of the servants to bring him an undershirt. And he puts on an undershirt, and the prince says to him, are you a chicken? He says, yeah. It doesn't say nowhere that a chicken cannot put on an undershirt. So he said, oh, you're right. I didn't think about it. So he said, I'm a chicken and I like to wear an undershirt. So the child says, you know what? I can also still be a chicken and wear undershirt. So he said, oh, sure, here is my undershirt. You can wear it. So now the child wears an undershirt. So he got himself another undershirt. 2 days later, he motions to send them a pair of pants. The chicken turns around and says, aren't we chickens? He said, sure, we are chickens, but it doesn't say chickens cannot wear pants. In fact, if you come to Sarasota, you'll see many animals wearing clothes. So the prince says, you're right. So he says, can I get you a pair of pants? I think you look nice. And the chicken says, yeah, it's not going to take away from me being a chicken. So he gets him a pair of pants. Now they're wearing pants and shirts. 2 days later, he motions to bring him a plate full of food. And the chicken says, chickens don't eat from a plate. He says, why? Chicken eat from the ground, but they can eat from a plate too. And the chicken says, the prince says, well, I guess you're right. So maybe I can eat from a plate too. So he motions to bring a plate. And as by the time 2 weeks went, he says to the prince, you know, chickens doesn't say chickens cannot sit on a chair. So how about we get off and sit on a chair where everybody's eating lunch? We can sit. They are humans, we're chickens. And the chicken says, it doesn't say that anywhere that chickens cannot sit on a chair. And he sat down on a chair, and the rest is history. Ali, you got it?
Very deep.
It's the first time you hear it?
The last.
You're lucky I didn't say dog. Okay, so the idea is, from God's point of view, it's one way. But in order for God to have a relationship, to connect to us, it has to come from my point of view. The prince will only change when he's convinced that his identity did not change. As long as he feared that by sitting on a chair he's not going to be a chicken anymore, he refuses. But when he refuses to get dressed. But as soon as someone says, hey, you can stay a chicken and still be dressed, he's allowing him to be, he's agreeing to be dressed. When God comes to a human being and says, I want you to be holy, I want you to connect with me, we fear that we're going to lose our identity. That's where we're going to go soon. But God, in his wise way, says, no, it doesn't say that a chicken cannot eat from a plate. It doesn't say that a chicken cannot sit on a chair. In other words, you can remain with your identity and still be able to serve me, connect with me, please me. And at the same time, you're a chicken. You're a human being and can enjoy. That's why God needed to follow our perspective, not his perspective. Because if it's from his perspective, we will be gone. There will be no human being. We will not have our wants, our desires, our life, because everything is God. In order for God to allow for us to have a relationship, he needed to convince us that we are still chickens, and chickens can sit on a chair, and chickens can be dressed, and chickens can eat from a plate. By doing so, once we are motivated to serve, live that life, we are able to connect to God. That's one point. The other point is, and this is the most powerful one that I'm going to talk about, there are two types of contractions. And I think it's very, very important to understand. If I have a lot and I want to share with you some, there are two ways of giving you some of it and making sure that you get some of it. One way, we call it tzimtzum contraction. I have $100,000 and I give you $10. So you have a little bit of what I have. That's very little. I gave you little and you got a little. You have the power plant that provides power to power up the entire city. But I need to charge my phone. If I plug my phone into the power plant, it will be nothing left from the phone. So by the time it reaches the outlet here, it's a very minute part of the power plant. The power that the power plant provides is very little by the time it reaches here, because there's a lot of transformers that keep contracting. In those two, what the giver provides is little of what the provider has. The power plant has so much voltage, and by the wall we get it, it's a much smaller. If I gave you $10 for my bank account of 100,000, I have 100,000, I gave you a little bit. But then there is another way. We call it hester, concealment. Concealment means I give you everything. But for you, at this point, you see nothing except a small sliver of it. Let me explain. I teach a child to read alphabet, ABC. When he learns to read ABC, in potential, he can read every book in the library. By the time, did he read? Is he knowledgeable? No. But what I give him, the wisdom, the technology, or the knowledge I provide by teaching him ABC, will enable him to read every topic in the world he desires and get it. Now, when he's 5 years old, 6 years old, he won't be able yet to read an entire book. So Stephen King's and all the other writers and poets, he has no idea what's going on. But it's all concealed within the alphabet, the ABC and the rules of proper grammar, etc. When I teach a child that the key language, writing and reading, and grammar, I'm enabling him over time to be able to become a very wise man. Did I provide him with all that? Not openly, but in potential, the answer is yes. In other words, I didn't give him just a little bit, I gave him everything. It's just that it will take time to develop it. Another example would be radio waves. Radio waves, when I speak to a radio and it goes out into the air, every person potentially can get every part of my speech. The only thing is they need the right tools. They need to receive a receiver that the broadcast can be received by the receiver. If they don't have it, they can't get it, but it doesn't mean it's not there. All they have to do is turn the receiver to the right channel and they got it. So everything is there, albeit in a concealed way, because only a person with a receiver device and with the right channel will be able to hear. But anybody without will not be able to. That's another type of concealment. I want you to know that when God created the universe and he concealed himself, we're going to get into Sovev and Memale, but before, there is two types of contraction. One contraction is he gives much less, a funnel that allows us to get only $10 from a bank account of 100,000. But there is another way, Hester, concealment, meaning God gave all of him to us, except we need the right receiver. We need to continuous discovering the alphabet so that we should be able to open books and study and discover. It all depends on us. So from God's perspective, he gave us everything. From our perspective, we have almost nothing. Like a child learning ABCD. But by the time the child, if he's diligent, by the time he discovers all the ABCs and proper grammar, he should be able to go to the library, open up any book and study on any topic. He will be able to be proficient just because he received the key, so to say, to access every book in the library. The same is with God. Ali, did you understand?
Is there any connection with the words Hester Panim?
That's what we're talking about. What is ponim? How do you know?
Every Jewish letter said that.
Mashayna ponim.
You know the word panim?
Correct.
Okay, I'm impressed. So the word ponim is face. Hester ponim, concealment of face. Not Hester ponim. Right? That's what you're referring to. The face is concealed, meaning God allows us, is broadcasting up in the air. The voice is all over. The vision is all over. I just need the right tool with the right turning to the right channel, and then I have everything. I have the whole thing. I don't have a little bit of it. So therefore, now I'm going to go back to Sovev and Memale. So I'm going to go very brief because actually a lot more is being mentioned here, but it's going to get too much. So when God wanted to create a finite existence, he needed to create an empty space, empty void of God. Soon we'll discover it's not truly void. It's a space where God conceals himself. Remember, we talked about concealment. And that concealment created void, emptiness. We call it Sovev, encircling. Nothing inside, it's just a vast circle of space. Now space is created. Before there was no space. Time now start counting from the moment space was created. And then he sent out a small sliver of ray of light, or Ein Sof. Compared to God himself, it's infinite finite. Remember, we talked that finite, no matter how big it is, it's no value to compare to the infinite. But that sliver of light is the source that will create all of the universe. Now, if somebody is asking, how is it possible? I'll answer to him, you have a child. How many body parts a human being possesses? Billions, DNA and cells. It's all started from a drop of semen, right? The drop of semen compared to the finished product is almost infinite. The universe is like a womb. The Sovev is a womb that it took 9 months, right? It took 9 months. And there are 9. The number 9 appears in the creation. There are 9 months for the development from a small, minute that has a DNA until I have hair and nails and fingers and a heart and a brains. Every part of it is a great, great miracle. It started from a small. However, there is a connection between them because we know there is the DNA, the same DNA. The same is that light. The light is the little drop that creates a human being. That light, or Ein Sof, compared to the Sovev, is nothing. It's like not even a speckle of dirt, because we discovered that 1 compared to a billion is 1 billionth. So it does have value. A billion compared to a infinite is no value. So because this is infinite, this is finite. We studied before that there has to be a finite, and therefore the finite will never come close to the infinite. Now we're discovering how. So God created Sovev. Sovev is encircling, meaning creating space and time. And now a human being can come into that space. Animals, oceans, water, plants. What creates that? The tool that creates that? Or Ein Sof, the light. We call it Kav. Kav in Hebrew is a line of a laser line, a laser that is sent into that space and is creating, slowly developing. By the way, in the first moment of creation, God created everything, except each day of the 6 days, he placed them on earth, right? You're familiar with that? We studied before in Tanya even, that when God created the universe, he created the full universe the way it is now, except that they were hanging. He did not place them. They didn't have life yet. On the second day, he separated heaven and earth, and the upper water, the heavens. On the third day, he created the upper water, the lower water. On Wednesday, he hung the sun and the moon. On Thursday, he put the plain and the grass. I'm sorry, he put the birds and grass and fish. On Friday, he put in the animals and the human. But all of them were already created. It started all at the beginning, at the first day of creation.
Spell Sovev form, please.
A what?
Spell Sovev form.
Samech Vav Beis Beis.
Repeat.
Beis Beis. Sovev. I just should share that we know our universe is round. Was it Newton that discovered that the world is round?
Not quite round. An oblate spheroid. It's oblate, it's really not round. It's pushed at both ends.
All right, but that's a circle.
It's not flat.
It's,
It's not flat. but-
Who is the one who discovered the earth is round and not flat? Newton? Is it Newton?
Newton.
Newton is the gravity. Okay. So what's before or around that time?
Columbus.
When he came around, he discovered, right?
He didn't fall off the edge before he got to.
So I'm here to tell you the Zohar,
Oh,
To tell-
Pythagoras.
who?
You know the Pythagorean theorem?
Pythagoras.
Pythagoras is widely credited as the first person to propose that the earth is a sphere.
How long ago?
500 BC.
500 BC. So Zohar, the Zohar is about 100 BC. And the Zohar tells us clearly that the universe is round because the space God created was round. So the atmosphere is all around. Okay? That's all. Let's continue. Memale is the light, or Ein Sof.
The space is Sovev and Memale is the light.
The space created, the void of God is Sovev, and the light, a ray of light that came out is or Ein Sof, is the Memale. It fills in. By the way, Sovev and Memale exist within each one of us. What's more important, and it's very crucial, when I say God created void and there is space and God is encircling, it doesn't mean that God's not part of it and not there. It means that God is not felt there and is not impacting it, but God is everywhere and God has no limit. If you say there is a room or an area where there is no God, you're creating limit to God and it's impossible. So the Tzimtzum is called not in the simple way of Tzimtzum, not simply contraction where God removes himself. A finite human being, a finite object can be moved from one place to the other. Infinite cannot be moved from one place to the other because space is not what houses the infinite. Space is limited. Infinite is limitless. But when we say Sovev, we call it Tzimtzum. We call it contraction. But it's not in a simple way. God is not felt there. So he allows us to feel as we are our own bosses. Remember the chicken under the table? We feel that we are chickens, except we are being led to believe that chicken, hopefully, chicken also can dress up. Chicken can eat human being food. Chickens also can sit on a plate. In other words, connecting with God with the identity that we have developed ourselves. So indeed, what? Is it too deep?
You know, I just remember the joke, tell you. Not a chicken. Sorry, Rabbi.
Um, I had some
Lost the
stories
train of thought.
and I forgot.
He had all the time.
Yeah. I had a story, but I forgot.
It's worse.
Okay, let's continue. 733. So, indeed, is the utterly insignificant quality of the minute illumination after the contraction, which clothes itself in the higher and lower worlds in order to provide them with sustenance and life. Now the line comes in and creates something. You create space. It's called clearing the ground. Now you can build a house. You can set foundation and start building a building. When compared with the quality of the hidden and concealed light that is of an infinite order and does not close itself or exercise its influence in the worlds in a revealed manner, providing them with life, but encompasses them from above. That is, it exerts its influence while remaining on its own level and is called Sovev Kol Almin, literally encompassing all worlds. Unlike the light that pervades all worlds, Memale Kol Almin, which permeates and vests itself within them, just as the soul vests itself in the body, the encompassing light remained aloof from the worlds. The meaning of this is not that it encircles and encompasses from above separately, God forbid, especially, God forbid, for in spiritual matters, the category of space is in no way applicable. Therefore, physical objects are spatial. They may be said to be found in one place or the other. Spiritually, however, is non-spatial. The term encompassing and encircling are never to be understood in the literal physical sense, but the meaning is that it encircles and encompasses from above insofar as the revelation of this influence is concerned. For influence which is in the category of revelation in the worlds is referred to as investitude, being clothed within the worlds, for the influence that they receive is closed and comprehended by them. That is, they are able to comprehend and internalize it, whereas the influence which does not comes within the category of revelation, but remaining obscured and concealed, and is not apprehended by the worlds, is not described as being invested in them, but as encircling and encompassing them. I hope I made myself clear. Encircling them, meaning that it's not felt and there is no direct relationship. Therefore, that's Sovev. Therefore, since the worlds belong in the order of the finite and limited, it follows that only an extremely minute and contracted reflection of the flow of the infinite light of the Blessed Ein Sof clothes and manifests itself in them in a revealed form, and this only to animate them in a finite and revealed state. In order for creation to come about, there must necessarily be at least some glimmer of godly illumination, albeit in an extremely limited form, for this enables creation to be finite and bounded. In order for the finite universe to be existed, there has to be a very small light, a sliver of godliness, and that will be able to create something that's finite. But the principal light that is without contraction to such an extent is called makif and circular and sovev, encompasser, since its influence is not revealed within the worlds, inasmuch as they belong in the order of the finite and the limited. I hope I made myself clear. Is that, Ali, do you understand?
I can't explain it, I don't understand, and I can't explain it.
Leon, do you understand? No?
Not complete.
Thank you for the feedback.
Could this then have been explained in a briefer form without, seriously, without translation of his Hebrew, which is very deep? And could it be made more simple?
How would you make it simpler?
I'll tell you, that's what I'm saying, it has to be.
I like the example of the power plant. Okay, that it had to contract way down. If I take my phone and plug it in Israel, which is 240, it's gonna blow up my phone.
Right.
So I understand the concept of contraction, which I assume it seems to,
But that's already Memale.
okay, that's down here. What we actually what we actually see. Sovev is something that we don't have any, it's there, but we don't know anything about it.
All right, let me summarize it. I would say, let me simplify it. When God wanted to create the universe, he needed to work with two paths, with two tools. One tool was to create a finite space. The other is to create a finite human being. So creating a finite space had to have been done with a powerful tool that is infinite. Therefore, that infinite power cannot continue creating a finite being. Let me use an example.
They created a finite space.
When I want to clear, I'm going to use a simple example. When I want to build a house here, I need to clear the land. I need to level the land. I use a D9. A D9. You don't know what a D9 is?
I know what denial is.
David, can you teach him what a D9 is?
D9,
Yeah. No?
the airplane? What?
No. A tractor.
Leveling of a field, no.
Yeah, D, can you spell D9?
D, letter D, 9. All right, because in Israel they use the D9
Oh, the
To go-
excavator.
to go
The
in.
caterpillar.
My nephew
It's an ex-
is in the army, a driver of a D9. They go in front of the tanks.
Right.
And their mines just made them jump about 9 inch. The D9 is so.
The mind sleeping ex.
He says to me, you go and then you start jumping, you go on mines. Literally, up to 10 inches.
Sweet.
A minesweeper.
But it blows them up, 30%.
They made them jump. 8, 9. D9s are from, Biden stopped delivering D9 to Israel at the time. Anybody, you're not familiar with that?
No.
He stopped. He says, anyway, back to our discussion. You bring a bulldozer, okay? You bring a bulldozer to start moving the ground. Can you do it by hand with a screwdriver and a pliers? Why not?
Won't do it.
It won't do it. Now, after the bulldozer have leveled the ground and it compacted it, he changed the wheels to a roller and he rolls over, make it very compacted. Now, you need to build a foundation, columns. You need to put 2x4s together to form a form for the cement to fall in. Now you need pliers and nails, right? Can you use the bulldozer to create that?
No.
Ali?
No,
Why not?
too big.
Too big. Was that they're going to destroy before it fixed it, created something, because that was before preparing the ground. But the actual creating, the creativity comes about fine tools, finite tools, small screwdriver, one hammer. If you use some wires, if you use a bulldozer scoop to try and push in the 2x4s, you'll be left with nothing. You will never be able to do it no matter how proficient, how good you are to drive the D9. Do we understand the difference? So clearing the land, God is everywhere. But he wants a relationship with something that's finite, with the power to be infinite, which we'll talk about later. How does he do that? He needs to create space. So what does he do? He brings a bulldozer, and the bulldozer clears the land. We call it Sovev. Sovev is encircling. Encircling meaning nothing inside. It's only there around. Just like, yes, just like the bulldozer clears the land. There's nothing else. He's not good for creating building. He's good for moving dirt. He's good for moving trees away. He's good for filling up the river, the channels, the whatever the depth, the ditches to make them level. That's it. That's called tzimtzum. The first, by the way, it's called tzimtzum harishon, the first tzimtzum, because there is a second one. The first tzimtzum is leveling, creating a circle of space. The space, that's the first contraction. We call it sovev. Why we call it sovev? Because it's not something that will be creative in creating something. It's they're just creating the space, removing God. That's the bulldozer. Ali, do you understand that?
Yeah, that's so bad.
Now comes the tools. The builder is bringing the mason guys, and later you'll bring the framers and you'll bring in the plumbers. They have small tools. With the small tools, they cannot move earth. They cannot level the ground. But what they can do is put water in the house. They can build the floor. They can put windows. That's called tzimtzum hasheni, the second contraction, because that's a sliver of light called memale. The word memale means filling in, meaning it's dealing with the details of the creation. Can you have one without the other? No. If the bulldozer did not clear the land, you can put as many columns as you want. The house will fall apart right away. But with the bulldozer alone, you don't have anything. You need the mason, you need the framer, you need the plumber and electrician to come each in there and dry the sheet rocks, and they need to do their job. They have fine tools compared to the bulldozer. Did I make myself clear? These are the two. You have Sovev tzimtzum harishon, and you have Memale tzimtzum hasheni. Now, where is God in relationship to me? In Memale. I told you the bulldozer cleared the land. It had nothing to do with the actual building. The actual building is those subcontractors that do their job. That's Memale. Memale is a light that will create an animal, clouds, ocean, buildings, cement, earth, silver, gold, humans. Each one according to what God desires. Now that's done for Memale. Because Memale is finite, it's very fine and small, it's a sliver of light, it is able to put 2x4s together, it is able to do the frame and the sheetrock and the plumbing and electricity. It's finite, yeah.
So you don't think whatever we said now would have been simpler to read this and be so confusing?
Ah,
Well, they're both finite, right? Sovev is finite also.
compared to God, yeah, but Sovev is infinite in comparing to the created beings. You understand that?
It's because of so it's infinite. It's not really infinite, but it seems infinite.
And the only caveat, I think I'm following what you said, is Sovev. We said it cleared the land, but it's here, except it's not felt and there is no direct relationship. Because had there been a direct relationship, we will be infinite. Memale, on the other hand, is directly related. Did I make myself clear?
Yes.
I'm going to share with you, this is my understanding, but it makes sense. A human being, in order for them to be blessed with a child, there needs to be a connection between a male and female. That physical drop that moves from the male to the female will take 9 months to develop. But before the drop, it starts from Chokhmah, from the brains. I think I showed it to you many times, right? How do you use da'at in the Torah the first time? Ve'adam yada et Chava ishto. Adam knew Eve, his wife, and then she gave birth to Abel. In other words, knowledge, which is part of the intellect, is the start of where a child comes from. If anyone, I'm not going to teach you how to consummate and how to have a relationship, but the idea is that there has to be a concentration when we have a relationship, because the mind will create the seed that will eventually have a child. The mind has to be clear of anything else. I think I said many times. That's why relationship, physical intimacy should be done late in the night when no disturbances, no phone calls, no people coming around, because there has to be the clearing of the mind so that the relationship is a complete unity. Did I make myself clear? So you have Sovev and you have Memale. In everything of the universe, the most creative human beings will get creative when their mind is quiet. Steve Jobs, I think, every year would go away for 2 weeks in the wilderness and be by himself. That's when ideas came. I think Thomas Edison would have on his night table, he would have a notepad and a pen, and he would say that the greatest revelations came to him just before he fell asleep. Anybody heard that before? In other words, there has to be a time when the mind is free and clear. That's when the good intellects, people with high IQ, can develop something new. There has to be clearing of the land before you can start a building. If you did not clear the land, you can try as hard as you want. The building, as soon as you pour the cement for the columns, it will fall apart. It will not stay there. It will not sustain itself. That's the idea of Sovev and Memale. Harry, do you understand that? Ali, did you understand that?
Better than I did.
Oh, thank God. We're going to give you a test next week.
God, good.
Thank you very much. We'll continue next week, Adore.
Thank you, Brad.